Hello, Standard Dose. My name is Dr. Hanisha Patel, and I am a naturopathic doctor. And I am going to be talking about joy as medicine. So, this is a three-part series, and this first part, we're going to be talking about how our hormones and our hormone health can affect our ability to experience joy, and how when we experience joy, that can affect our hormones as well. So, getting right into it, one of the main reasons why I think this topic of joy is so important is because joy is something that is innate within us, and we all have the ability to experience this amazing emotion. However, so often it gets kind of brushed off, right? So often we're focused on getting things done, going to, our appointments and our meetings and fitting the deadlines and all of these things that we forget to experience joy, or we're unable to. And so in so many ways, this comes from our mental health. But I think so many people are addressing this, and I love that mental health has become or has come to the forefront of so many people's attention, and it's absolutely essential. But there are parts of mental health that have not been addressed, and that missing piece, I think, is the physical aspect of joy, or the physical aspect of our mental health, because whatever is happening within our physical bodies can impact our mental health. So whatever is happening, for example, today we're going to be talking about hormones. So the things that are going on with our hormones are going to affect our ability to experience joy, or inability to experience joy, right? And so the way that it does that is because our hormones can actually affect our neurochemistry and or our brain health, and our brain health is directly connected to our mental health. And this is why this is such an important piece that I think has been missing in a lot of our contemporary culture. We're missing the concept and the conversation around physical joy, or physical health, and how that can impact joy and how that can help support our mental health. So how can our hormones then affect our ability to experience joy? So when our hormones are out of balance, and so when I say this, I'm talking about they're not adequately working the way they were intended to. So we are out of what we call homeostasis. And when we're out of homeostasis, that can cause a whole slew of effects. But today we're going to focus on the hormones and how that affects our mental health, our mood, and our ability to experience joy. So when I say out of balance, I'm talking about for when women, I'm very specifically talking about cisgender women in this video. I do want to mention our hormones can impact our brain and mental health, whether or not we are a transgender woman or man or a cisgender man, doesn't actually matter. Our hormones can impact our mood regardless. But today I'm mostly focusing on women's hormones, or cisgender women's hormones. And I will be using that as kind of the template to help explain what exactly is happening. And so with that said, what is normally happening when our hormones is out of balance, or hormones are out of balance, is oftentimes what we'll see is we'll have a lot more of the inflammatory estrogens. So we'll have more inflammatory estrogens, less of the progesterone that we need, and an out of balance ratio of testosterone. And so when I talk about having more inflammatory estrogens, there are three different types of estrogens. There's estrone, estradiol, and estrotriol. And of these, we will have metabolites of each of these. More specifically today, what I want to be talking about is estrone and its metabolites. So we have 3 different metabolites of estrone that is more commonly known, and those are 2-hydroxy, 4-hydroxy, and 16-hydroxy estrones, and those are the different metabolites. The 4-hydroxy estrone is actually the most inflammatory, and this can be protective in some ways, and this is why we do want some of the inflammatory estrogens. This helps our body react to situations where we might need to get out of it very quickly. That's where that inflammatory estrogen can come in handy and be very supportive. But in excess, that's where it can cause detriment to us. And so that's where we'll see a lot of women experiencing heavy bleeding, menstrual cramps, mood disorders like depression, anxiety, inability to sleep. All of these things can be associated with higher levels of inflammatory estrogen. We'll also see conditions like endometriosis and fibroids. These are extremely common with elevated levels of estrogen, or elevated levels of 4-hydroxyestrone more specifically. So the reason why I bring up these metabolites is because when we test estrogen in the blood, if your doctor has even tested for that, then you might have normal levels of estrogen. And so it might not seem like you have estrogen dominance, as we call it in layman's terms, because your level of estrogen is in totality is normal. But what we're looking at is your level of inflammatory estrogens. What is affecting that, right? How out of balance is that? Your 2-hydroxyestrone is your more anti-inflammatory estrogen. So we want more of those. 60 to 80% of our estrone metabolites are ideally the 2-hydroxyestrone. And so if that ratio is out of balance, then that is going to affect our hormones, and therefore affect our mood, and all those other symptoms that I had just mentioned. So this needs to be addressed. So what can you do to help reduce the inflammatory estrogens in your body? One of the best things is to eat a very polyphenol-rich diet. What that means is a diet that is filled with a lot of color and micronutrients. So that is including all the different sorts of vegetables, some fruits, things like that, that can really help optimize your estrogen levels. And the way that it does that is because a lot of these foods can be supportive of your liver. Your liver is where you process all your hormones. And so when you have excess levels of estrogen, or the inflammatory estrogens, that's where your liver will actually start to push these excess estrogens out of your body. And so your liver is your greatest detoxification organ, right? And so when your liver is unable to properly detoxify, then it can't get these excess estrogens out. So we want to eat more foods that are supportive of our liver, so that are going to support our detox pathways. That's going to be foods like artichoke, radishes, turnips, beets, dark leafy greens, broccoli, Brussels sprouts. All these amazing, delicious vegetables are really what we're looking for when we're talking about liver supportive foods. Outside of that, there are other supplements and herbs that can also be supportive, something like milk thistle or dandelion. They're absolutely wonderful. Coriander or cumin are also great herbs that can help support your liver's detox pathways. Also, DIM is something that has been studied significantly to be able to actually get rid of those excess inflammatory estrogens and help balance your estrogen progesterone ratio. So those are just a few of the options, but I do always recommend talking to your naturopathic physician before starting any herbal treatment or supplements, because it might not be a good fit for you. It just kind of depends, and or the dosing may be different per person. So right now I'm not giving any dosing because every single person has kind of a different dosing depending on what is going on with their biochemical makeup, okay? So That's all about estrogen. The next hormone I want to talk about is progesterone. Progesterone is this amazing hormone that we all absolutely need in order to have our normal cycle. So often what we see with progesterone deficiency is that women will have difficult time conceiving, and or they will experience miscarriages often. And so that is usually occurring with low progesterone levels. This is the main hormone necessary for fertility purposes. It can also impact other aspects of our health. So lower levels of progesterone have also been associated with depression, sleep disturbances, and also having that out of balance with excess estrogen, lower progesterone can also lead to some of those other conditions like endometriosis and fibroids, like I mentioned. But oftentimes we'll see lower progesterone levels in women with PCOS. So these are just some common things we'll see with lower levels of progesterone. And progesterone is this actually, what we found through studies is that we can supplement with progesterone and see improvements in sleep and mood for a lot of women. So this is how powerful it can be. One of the best ways to improve progesterone levels is by having healthy stress management techniques and just reducing the stress in general, right? So there are going to be stressors regardless, but what we want to do is reduce that stress response. So whatever the stressor may be, ideally, our stress response isn't a complete spike, right? So what we normally have is a spike in cortisol anytime there's a stressor. Ideally, we're able to get it where we can smooth out that stress response. So it's still a little stressful, but I can handle it. Instead of, it's so stressful, I cannot handle this, I'm feeling anxious, I'm going to shut down, I have no energy, I have lack of motivation, right? All of these things, a panic attack, those are things where we're not able to properly control that stress response. So we ideally want to be able to smooth out that stress response. And that's what is going to be very supportive of progesterone levels in general, because the way our hormones work is when there's a stressor, our body is going to go and create that cortisol or that stress hormone. And a part of that pathway is we go from our steroid hormones like cholesterol, and then we eventually produce progesterone, and then progesterone will then turn into cortisol or that stress hormone. When we need cortisol, when we're under stress, that's the only thing that our body can focus on, because the first thing our body is, the first and main concern for our body is to keep us alive. If we're focused on constantly keeping our bodies alive, we can't get to the point where we're thriving and have adequate levels of progesterone, have healthy, elevated moods, and proper sleep and proper hormones, and the ability to conceive. Because the last thing on our body's mind when we're trying to survive is reproduction, right? That's not necessary when a bear is coming after us. We don't need to focus on trying to make a baby. We need to focus on getting out and surviving from that bear attack. So that is one really crucial thing that can help support your progesterone levels. Outside of that, a powerful herb is Vitex. Vitex has been shown to help improve progesterone levels over 6 months naturally, and I absolutely love using Vitex in my practice. I've used it myself as I've gone through my own hormonal balancing journey, and it's absolutely amazing. But again, please make sure to consult with a naturopathic physician, because it may not be right for you. Okay, and then the last reproductive hormone I want to talk about is testosterone. So testosterone is predominantly considered a male hormone. However, as cisgender women, we do also have testosterone. And when it is out of balance, when there are when we're not having in proper moderation, that can lead to some other hormonal issues, as well as affect our mood. So with lower testosterone levels in women, it's been shown to lead to low libido, inability to lose weight or obtain muscle mass, and depression, and low energy levels or fatigue. So these are some common things that have been found with lower levels of testosterone, and what we can do to support that. Again, the stress management, working on that, but also there are some strength training. Strength training is a great way to help optimize testosterone levels in women who have low testosterone. But also an herb that's powerful and helpful is saw palmetto, and sometimes, depending on what's going on with your hormones, DHEA supplementation may also be helpful. And then the other way that testosterone can go is it could be too high. So this is something we often see with women with PCOS, and this could be due to a number of different reasons. And when women have higher levels of testosterone, that's when we'll see more of like an anxiety sort of picture. And so with that said, addressing higher testosterone levels is a little bit more complicated. We got to address the underlying conditions. So insulin resistance, digestive issues, stress management, all of these things need to be considered when addressing high testosterone levels in women and or PCOS. And then, so those were the reproductive hormones, but I also want to mention that there are so many other hormones that interplay in this whole cascade of events. And two of those other hormones that I wanted to talk about a little bit more detail was cortisol and oxytocin. So cortisol, we talked about a little bit with progesterone, how it can cortisol is that stress hormone, so it can elevate that stress response. So what we want to do is get that cortisol in balance and smooth out that cortisol response. The other hormone is oxytocin. Oxytocin is also known as the love hormone. And this is the hormone that's actually produced naturally in women's bodies when we are in labor and delivery. So what it helps do is actually it helps with contractions. And also, because it's a love hormone, it's enhancing that mother-child bond. And so it's very powerful, and they actually will use a synthetic version of oxytocin during labor to stimulate contractions sometimes as well. And so that just shows how powerful this hormone can be. And oxytocin can be released with hugging someone, with sex. Like I said, during labor, it can be with just a social connection, right? So this is a very powerful hormone that also has been shown to optimize progesterone levels too. So when we can increase our oxytocin levels, so having healthy sex, having a friend to hug. I know during the pandemic it's been really difficult, but if you're able to hug, a loved one or whoever is around you, just hugging them as much as possible. I know I was hugging my sisters way more during this pandemic than ever before because I needed that oxytocin, right? So getting these things in as much as you can will help to optimize your hormones and therefore help optimize your mood as well and help you experience joy. So I hope that this was helpful in understanding how your hormones play a role in your mood. In the end, I want to mention that your hormones can definitely affect your mood and your ability to experience joy, but when you experience joy and can create a life where you experience it regularly, that can also help optimize your hormones. So it's a bi-directional effect, and that's what makes it absolutely so incredibly powerful and so exciting. So work on building these things, building a life where you can cultivate joy regularly, but then also find joy in the little things that you little mundane things that you might have to just do, like your taxes or something. I have to do that soon. So that's the first thing on my mind. I'm like, all right, how do I make taxes fun? Turn on some reggae music and just jam out while I'm doing my taxes, right? So enjoying the process and these little things, but then also creating a lifestyle where you're able to cultivate joy regularly is going to also help optimize your hormones in the end. But optimizing your hormones is also going to help cultivate that joy. So I do like to do more extensive lab testing when it comes to hormones. I like to use something called the Dutch test, where we can actually understand the breakdown of those estrogen metabolites, like I said, and the other hormones. And we get a better understanding of your cortisol response as well, so your adrenal function. And so that's why I like doing that test. So if you're interested in any of that, please feel free to reach out. Or if you have any questions, also please feel free to reach out. But that is all I have for you all. Thank you so much for listening. My practice is called Mahan Health, and that means Mahan means great in Sanskrit, and so that's why to me it only makes sense to have the absolute best when it comes to your health. And so that's why I want to say and end this with, I'm wishing you all Mahan Health, and I will see you in the next video.